Hello and welcome to an Infinity the Game battle report. In this game we're playing Dashat Company against my opponent's Nomads in ITS Season 14 Firefight. This is my list here on the screen, and just to preface this slightly, Dashat Company is a faction that I've enjoyed returning to recently. Obviously I played them a lot in N3, but not so much in N4, where they were heavily changed, not because of their own composition, which stayed as it was, but as a result of changes in the game, in particular obviously the 15 order cap, which heavily impacted Dashat Company's previous quantity over quality approach. How I find Dashat Company plays now is that you are still looking to rely, like even more than Hack Islam does, on your huge quantity of excellent irregular troops, but you use the discount afforded by those pieces to now actually like splash in the occasional expensive thing. You can see a Magariba Guard in this list, and a Magariba Guard is a piece that I would almost never play in vanilla Hack Islam. Like, sometimes, occasionally, I have seen Hack Islam lists that I like that use the Magariba, and they do the same kind of thing, where they use these sort of like good irregular pieces to allow the, frankly, a little overcosted Magariba to be afforded in a list. But in Dashat Company, it's where it really comes into its own, because you have not just the Coon Bikers in Hack Islam, which I love, but you've got two Libertos who have access to Mimetism -3. In this version of the list, I've committed a degree of sacrilege, and I have taken the mines and the light shotguns off of the Libertos, which I would pay for. It sucked to lose that. But in order to make that change, I've afforded myself a lot of guns. So what else have we got that's going on in this list? Well, it's Dashat Company, so we have McMurray, and spoiler alert, he would be incredible. We then have a little fire team. Now, this was intended to be a Haris of a Takaware Zuyong, Valyria Gromors, and a Rushi. But in-game, I would actually end up also deploying the Digger alongside it to make it into a 4-man link to give Valyria 6 cents. This is because in this game I was going second. If I was going first, the Digger would almost certainly duo with the Magariba, who would probably play more aggressively and escort it upfield. I've taken a significant risk in this list by having literally just one Ghulam Lieutenant. I wrote this list before we agreed that we would play Firefight. Taking a single obvious single wound Lieutenant in Firefight is a really bad idea because there are points on the line for killing more Lieutenants, but there is no reinforced tactical link. So basically making your Lieutenant public information is kind of stupid, but it's Dashat Company, and my troop slots are on an absolute premium. My points are not, so single Ghulam it is. We also have, and this is something that I'm going to keep experimenting with, a Katyusha MRL for 9 points in 1 SWC. This is like objectively worse in all ways compared to a guided missile remote, except it's like almost half the price. And it gets guided into a list. It's like super bad guided, but you don't have particularly good hacking. I just want to be able to spotlight something as an ARO and make it maybe be a threat, and paying 1 point and 1 SWC and 9 points for that kind of felt a little bit reasonable. Now, the payout, the opportunity cost is that one of these Libertos doesn't have a mine. Likewise, the inclusion of the Rushi in this list, right? The cost is one of these Libertos does not have a mine and a light shotgun. But the Tractor Mule is something I think is worth considering. Ultimately, it may end up getting cut only because, by God, there are a lot of fat bases in this list. The Magariba Guard is Silhouette 8, the Rushi, the 2 Coom Riders, and the Tractor Mule collectively make 4 Silhouette 4 bases. This list is a little hard to deploy. Rounding out Group 2, we've got a combination that I quite like with a Rafik FTO with a Digger. That gives you a gun and a utility piece in Group 2, and although the Rafik is faster than the Digger, it still sort of like, it makes the Digger regular and it escorts the Digger up the field. It sort of drags the Digger up the field using its attack awareness order, which is what you want Diggers to be doing. You want them to be able to sort of like reliably position where they need to be and not be impetuous, because a Digger that is impetuous is a little easy to kill. A Digger that is not impetuous is frustratingly hard to kill for 14 points. We then have 1 Fanus Remote and 2 Coom Riders. They're the Light Shotgun Coom Riders. I have run some lists, I've experimented with some lists that cheap out and take the cheapest possible Coom Riders, and I've just come back to the conclusion that no. Under any circumstance, find the single point to give them DACWs and light shotguns, to the extent that if it came to it, I would seriously consider making the Libertos not have Mimetism before I gave the Coom Riders chain rifles over light shotguns. So this in total, this is a Dashat list. This is a Dashat list to a T. Let's count the things in this list that are cheerleaders. The Fanus and the Ghulam. Every single other piece, right? That is 13 pieces in this list, plus the free Bashi Bazooka that I'll get as part of as Firefight. That is 13 to 14 active pieces. That's a ton. It means this list can take damage and still be just punch on. It's got guided in the list, but it still has a Red Fury, a Spitfire, and a heavy machine gun and a multi-heavy machine gun. So it's got 4 burst 4 weapons, or burst 5 weapons. This is cool. Like, there are sacrifices that are being made, and getting those Libertos back to having mines is something that I do really want to do. But there's a lot going on here. This is the second version of this list that I've run. I'm going to keep iterating on it. I'm actually going to continue to, I think, change how some of the link teams are formed, but it's solid. It also has more orders than God, because you've got 3 TAC-aware orders in this list, which means that you're running 18 orders total. There is a problem, obviously, in that TAC-aware is not concentrated, so you have the, 1 TAC-aware in Group 2 and the 2 TAC-awares in Group 1. But the Magariba is really good at spending her TAC-aware, which means that really it's just you use those orders to reposition, to get a little bit of ground. You have to be disciplined in how you use them. You have to not get yourself lulled into the trap of having to do something. So, for example, in practice games or testing games, these Coom Riders are almost always what attacks on the first turn. It's not the Rafik. The Rafik uses its tactical awareness order on turn 1 to do something useful, maybe just move forward. It does not attack. It's the Coom Riders that do that first. Just as an example, that's how you want to think about TAC-aware orders, as a resource that contributes to your battle plan, rather than being something that you have to spend or feel pressured to spend and then throw more orders after that. So this is my opponent's Nomad list, and as you can probably see, it is much more optimized for Firefight. So among other things, it has 2 moderators, which means that he has a decoy lieutenant. I've also, by the way, I've reconstructed this as best I can, but it is approximately correct. It's Firefight, which means that every parachutist has parachutist deployment zone, and every drop troop has drop troop +3. So he has a Hellcat that is landing on 19s, and a Tomcat who can walk in off the deployment zone. This is a really good Firefight list. And then it's just a bunch of the usual Nomad stuff. 2 moderators, super cool. A Gator, everyone loves Gators. He's gone for a reaction Zond to be backed up by Zoe, Engineer, and a Zonbot, and I really like that in this scenario, because, spoiler alert, 360 visors, when everything in your opponent's list that is parachutist can walk on your table edge, 360 visors are good. This is not the last time I'm going to say that, and it's going to hurt me to say it in future sections of this video. But that reaction's on, super useful. 2 Morans, 1 combi, 1 boarding shotgun. On a personal note, I'm increasingly coming around to the idea that no, just take boarding shotguns with the Moran. Morans, yes, they can gunfight with BS-12, but so often they're just in a position where something's going to come in to trade with them, and you just want the shotgun. You just want your opponent to be forced to trade, and the more that Morans are capable of just trading with whatever goes into them, the better value they can get, because you have to kill them if you're playing against them. So yeah, I'm coming to prefer just shotguns, but 1-on-1 is a more versatile setup if you think you will be doing any gunfighting. Vertigo's on, because it's Nomads. No surprises there, and then Jazz and Billy. So what have we got here? We've got Morans, an excellent hacking network, some gunfighting, but really it's the Gator that's going to be doing the bulk of the work. Some Morlocks to push forward. What have we sacrificed? Okay, there's no Libertos. That's tolerable because you have those Morans. And then we have 2 basically quality pieces to really take advantage of the scenario. We have the Tomcat and the Hellcat. Hellcats are something that in Nomads I want to play with more, because actually they're just really good. Like, landing as efficiently as they do for the points they pay, I think Hellcats might really be like a hidden banger. But in this scenario, they're absolutely excellent. Like me, his Bashi Bazook would be the Rifle Light Shotgun EM mines. I have come to the conclusion that is generally the correct Bashi Bazook. I've run other profiles, I've tried like the Breaker, the AP Rifle Breaker pistols, and you just need a template weapon. For what the Bashi is doing, it's just better to have the template weapon. Thumbs up for that Bashi. So that would mean 3 airborne troops, 1 combat jump, 2 parachutists that my opponent would have access to here. So here's the table. I'm rolling whip 14 lieutenant, he's rolling whip 13, he wins, and I swear, because 1, I have only 1 lieutenant, and 2, it's Firefight. There's really no reason whatsoever to go second. Going second in Firefight sucks a little bit. I wanted to go first. I wanted to use those 16-inch deployment zones to ram Libertos, McMurray, and Coom Riders down his throat. And that was not going to happen. I was going to have to defend against a Nomad list. Damn. Nevertheless, we do the best we can. One of the challenges I mentioned about my list is that it is fat, right? It has lots and lots of Silhouette 4 and 1 Silhouette 8 base. And I was interrupted briefly by cockatoos. I don't know if you heard that, but fuck cockatoos. They are the worst bird. Anyway, I was concerned, deeply concerned, about the fact that I was playing against someone who would almost certainly have guided missiles, and I had an obvious lieutenant. But then I remembered, I have an option. I have an option for decoying my lieutenant. That's right, the Bashi is going to take up the strain here. So the Bashi would be deploying, pretending to be a vanilla Gulam, giving up its hollow echo so that it looked like I just had 2 Gulams. And that would just about get there, but there were a few other things that would get me across the line. Firstly, quick conversation about the table. The way that you can see it here, if the space is visible, it is playable. If it is covered by a roof, it's not. So this building here and this building here are enclosed spaces. We're experimenting with those. What does enclosed space mean? Well, it means that you access them. You can access them via doors here and here. Short movement skill will take you to the space above the door. You can also enter and exit through the windows just by walking through them if you have Cunning Plus or Super Jump, but it counts as an enclosed space for the purposes of guided missiles. That would come up just a little bit this game. It would be relevant. I pick the table edge that I have chosen mostly because I'm going second and trying to deploy a Silhouette 8 model that won't die. So really, I'm just picking my table edge to accommodate all of these very large models that I have, and it's one of the reasons why I'm mixed on like the Katyusha and to an extent the Rushi. I'm not mixed on Coom Riders. I freaking love them. They're not leaving my lists, but somewhere you just eventually have too many Silhouette 4 models. So I see most of my opponent's deployment first. The screen is cutting it off very slightly, but the only model, the obvious reserve, is his Gator, which is going to deploy down there. Otherwise, we've got a Massai Moran in this space, there's a Moran in this space here, we've got a Morlock with an assault pistol, another Morlock, a Pywell here, who I forget has a picture, that's going to suck. The reaction zone is deployed there, and then there's just generally a smattering of pieces staged to attack. It's not the most aggressive deployment that it could be. For example, like Pywell is making use of the 16-inch deployment zone there, but stuff like this Morlock, for example, and the other Morlock is down here in this corner. Stuff like those pieces aren't making maximal use of the 16-inch deployment, but they are basically, they're deployed in a way where if they're impetuous, they're not going to get completely shredded. For my part, after my opponent has deployed and everything, it's very obvious that there's at least, like, I've only seen 12 troops or something, less than like 11 troops. There is obviously a ton that is missing, which means some airborne stuff. So I have to deploy to accommodate that. I also just expect either a Salamander or a Gator as the reserve drop. I didn't do an SWC count. I think if I had done an SWC count, I would have determined that it had to be a Gator that was reserve dropping, because there is an SWC for the Salamander, but it wouldn't materially change how I deployed. So what have I done? Well, we are compensating basically for the fact that we have not that much deployment space for Silhouette 4 models. There's one Coom Rider here, and there's another one just off screen back there. They are deployed in positions where, like, a HMG here could shoot into this Coom Rider, and likewise a HMG that got around to maybe here could shoot into that Coom Rider, but those are just sacrifices I have to make. If my opponent is shooting Coom Riders, then I'm getting a smoke dodge on 16s, and they are shooting like mimetism and cover. I have a reasonable chance. Like, if a Gator moves up or that reaction zone moves up, I have a pretty reasonable chance of surviving that. Around that, we set up a hacking network. So we have the Fanus remote here, the Rafik remote here, and the Rushi here, which means that we've got kind of like this as a bubble of hacking area, which is a pretty good like forward progression. It means that if the Gator, whenever it deploys, does this a big run up the table, it's in a position where it's going to be threatened by a fairly competent total control if it wants to start taking those kills. We've got hidden down here, we have the guided missile remote. Now, it's important to note that Silhouette 4, you can't just deploy them flush against the table edge and be able to see the entire table edge, because you can fit, right? You can physically fit a 25mm base inside the back half of those models. So I think she's been nudged in this space, but this Katyusha is kind of watching like that line like that. We also have, we've got the Zuyong literally up against the back table edge here, and that is so that it can watch the entire table edge. And we have the Rushi here, and then a Digger here. This Digger would roll up +2 armor, and then this Digger over here would roll a multi-sniper rifle, although never actually use it. We've got McMurray in the building here, and that's because, remember, he has super jump. This is, Tariq McMurray. He can super jump out the building if he wants to impetuous, and having him deployed here makes this Ghoulam look like it is my real lieutenant. This is the Bashi Bazook, and the reason why this is the Bashi Bazook is that there is a door here, and I'm considering running him out. If he survives the first turn, I want the option of hollow echoing for free, and then running and detonating some mass rounds. I never would, but I wanted the option. My actual lieutenant is literally behind a flower bed, like there, right in the corner of the table. It's not the perfect position, and I think my opponent, Kyle, actually guessed who the lieutenant was, but it was as safe as I could make them. We've also done one kind of janky thing, which is, because I want it to look like my Bashi Bazook is off the table, I am having these two Libertos pretend to be a Libertos with a mine layer. So I've got one standing on this rooftop, literally like watching everything, and one in the corner here. It actually doesn't fool Kyle for a hot second. He just runs at it with a Morlock anyway, but I wanted to present the illusion. So here we can see just sort of like how this core link team has been deployed. Again, because the Mega Reba was my reserve, the Digger just ends up joining this team. And then here we can see the Nomad deployment. We've got Zoe, Jazz, Billy. The two moderators are split well apart, so it's going to be really hard to get to both of them. And then there's the reaction summoned on proper Overwatch. And yeah, the Lizard comes down here because he's not super intending to be active with the Lizard in the first turn necessarily. He's aware of like traps and stuff. The Lizard is in a good position to maybe do something, maybe not. My Mega Reaver, of course, comes down after his Lizard is deployed. And so I was sort of planning on putting it in this position here anyway, but the priority is that it's not super easy to just go on with an enemy tag. If he wants to get to it, the Lizard's going to have to move all the way around here, which means he has to neutralize the Rafik first. So it's not going to take it's going to take a lot of orders, but it's also going to require him to neutralize the repeater, which actually is pretty much how his first turn begins. So not a lot of orders because, well, a lot of orders because it's Nomads with a Lizard, but less than it might be because there are models off the table. And he actually begins with Pywell. So we have Pywell's Tack-Aware order. It takes Pywell 2 orders to move, shoot a pitcher, miss, and then move prone and end up here to put a pitcher down there. And that's the point where I go, oh hell, I had forgotten that basically every non-synchronized version of Pywell had pitchers these days. Yep, he is super, super good. He is so very good. God damn it. Now there is a pitcher sitting over. It's actually in range of this Ghoulam, this Rafik Ghoulam, and this Digger. And then Jazz goes for a walk. Jazz is moving, Zoe goes for a walk, and she's moving in this direction here. And I breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief here because her forward movement indicates that my opponent has classifieds on his mind. He's moving toward my HVT here. And on the way, he does some annoying and frustrating things. The big thing that he does is he oblivions the Rafik. Alas, poor Rafik, I needed your repeater. I needed you making this Digger not impetuous. Nope, duo is broken. Rafik is oblivioned, which immediately is just like, okay, that opens up a weak point on this flank. Now, it takes him some orders to do all of this. Zoe, Pywell, and the Gator all obviously share a group. So as soon as it takes two, even Tack-Aware, right? It takes Tack-Aware, and then a regular order, and then another regular order to turn off the Rafik, which is enough that, having also stripped orders from that combat group, it's kind of like, okay, the Lizard can't get to me, there aren't enough orders, and this is kind of the price of having that many drop troops in the list. Nevertheless, Zoe basically spends the order running up here, doing hacker things, scoring maybe even 2 classifieds, because I think she's got to espionage the HVT, and there may even have been something else, and then she just runs back, and she hangs out back here, where she will stay until almost the end of the game. So that's a classified in the pocket of my opponent, and the Rafik neutralized, but no actual kills. Impetuous sort of wise, the Morlocks have been moving forward, and one Morlock will end up opening this box and then hiding behind there. And this Morlock, of course, will have just run straight at my Libertos, because he doesn't care. It's a Morlock. He'll dodge. If that's really a mine, he'll dodge it. It's not really a mine. I get a little lucky here where the Libertos manages to avoid a couple of Discover rolls. So the Morlock will sort of like end up down here. The Lizard moves and attempts to discover and then goes into suppressive fire. That's a really difficult one, obviously, because of range, cover, and rheumatism. And he ends up with like 1 order left in the group, and he just is like, fine, whatever, I discover shoot with the reactions on. That's enough of a threat, even needing to roll a 7 to discover. If he rolls a 7 to discover and I just let him shoot, he will blow me up. And I'm not super pissed if the Lobertos gets discovered at this point, so I elect to dodge. In terms of percentage plays, maybe not 100% right, but it was fine. The Lobertos dodges and avoids the reaction zone. So what does this mean? It means I've gotten through my opponent's entire first turn with not no damage, because getting the Rafik Oblivion sucks, but no casualties, which puts us in a really good position. So we begin the turn, and the first problem we have to solve is the repeater here, which is fine, because Turlock McMurrow will just jump out the window as his Impetuous Order and chain rifle it on the way past. It's a two-story building, he has easy line of fire, and he destroys the damn thing. From here, he continues his run, around here, up onto the building, and he zots Pywell. He gets spotlit on the way through, but that's okay. As the last order he will spend this turn, he hunkers down next to Pywell's unconscious body, which will protect him from missiles if he fails to reset, but then he just resets clear of the targeted. So he'll end up basically prone here, which is not terribly impossible to get to, right? But it is difficult to get to. It will be challenging to go after him. A Morlock could do it, but I'll fight a Morlock with him if I absolutely have to. On this flank, I need to kind of like unpick the poor Libertos. I need to deal with the stuff that's over here. And so we have a few things that we do. The first thing that we do is we move the HMG up and around using its tactical awareness, and then up to here. Takes second order to do that, and it engages the total reaction zone in combat. This is 5 dice 13s versus 4 dice 11s, so it's not risk-free, but it's a fairly good face-to-face roll. And I actually win the first face-to-face roll, but only get one shot through, and he makes his armor roll. And then I shoot him, and we tie the face-to-face roll. And then I shoot him, and we tie the face-to-face roll. Then I shoot him, and we tie the face-to-face roll. Then I shoot him, and we tie the face-to-face roll. Then I shoot him, and we tie the face-to-face roll. Then I shoot him and knock him unconscious level 1. This is not the best turn in the world. That's kind of bad, actually, and I'm glad McMurrow was able to move quite efficiently, but if I hadn't had TAC awareness orders and blown through a bunch of my command token spending orders, that would have just all been kind of bad. So it's a testament to the number of orders that the first combat group has with like the TAC awareness stuff, that I was able to really do anything at all. So I eventually put the reactions on down, with quite a bit of frustration along the process, and then this Kum Rider, who is spending orders from group 2, comes up to here, dismounts, moves around to here, and dies, but he dies, firstly he kills the Morlock, and then he rounds the corner and he puts 2 shotgun shots into the Masai Moran, who tanks both of them, and then just runs into melee. He runs into melee, the Masai Moran shoots at him, or attempts to dodge the shotgun rather, so I face-to-face it, and I hit him with my DSCW, and he goes down. If I'd been trying to do this with an AP CCW and a chain rifle, it would have been, and the Moran had just made those saves, it would have really sucked. So this was a case of I am glad that my 7-point model was a 7-point model, not a 6-point model. Otherwise, all that happens this turn, and that was a lot that happened this turn, I'm pretty happy with that. What happens this turn is that the Ruchi, who has 2 irregular orders, because it's still TAC aware, it moves and tries to reset, and then it resets. And it fails both of them. It does need a 4, so I'm not expecting miracles here, but it fails both of them, but it gets in a position where it is watching kind of this part of the table. So here we are at the beginning of my opponent's turn 2. Sorry for the blurry photo, we'll dwell on it as little time as we can. What we can see that's happened here is everything I just described. The motorcycle is there, but the Kum Rider is dead, the Libertos is in suppressive fire, and then the Magariba has popped down some mines there and there. Now, I didn't mention this on the first turn, but I did, obviously, I didn't mention any airborne troops deploying, and that's because of the Magariba Guard. I am on record as kind of paying for the Magariba Guard's 360 visor, but it was super, super, super good in this scenario. If you saw the thumbnail, and actually, we'll just pop back to this image here very briefly, this was my opponent attempting to bring a Pashi Bazooka on. And I just declared Flamethrower against all 3 of those tokens. We rewound that order. I mean, it wasn't a surprise to me that he had a Bashi, but yeah, the 360 visor. I hate paying for it, but it's pretty useful in Firefight when everything has Parachutist Deployment Zone. So, damn, I guess. Alright, the 13 points I pay for that were pretty relevant this game. I'm very salty about it, but fair cop, the Magariba 360 visor did me a super solid and was pretty instrumental in me fending off multiple drop troops for some time. So it's my opponent's turn 2, and he's got to step on the gas. He needs to do damage He does not done really any damage. Effectively he's killed one Coom Rider, which is not enough. And that was what happened in my turn. So it's lizard time. The lizard is back here, and it just moves out and back, and it shoots this poor dumb Libertos to death. I should not have put the Libertos in suppressive fire. I should have moved the Libertos back behind this total cover. I knew the Gator could see him because he had attempted to discover me last turn. So that's my dumb, and the Libertos died. Rip Libertos. From here, the Gator moves up and around here, and then it comes to this corner and around. And we have this Rafik here, who flash pulses him, and rolls an 11, and the Gator doesn't crit, because it's in 0 range and I'm in cover, and he fails his BTS roll, and he gets stunned. And that's super cool, because he was going to almost certainly try and kill this Magaruba Guard. But now the Magaruba Guard gets to live, because the Gator has to basically walk all the way back here. I forward observe him on the way out. He comes around to here, and he's going to be end up stuck there. Zoe repairs him. She will also repair this blasted total reaction bot. But although she recovers the states from him, like, that's it. That's all that's most of the turn. He still can't really bring any of these drop troops on, because we have this 360 degree line of sight Uberchonk sitting here, just kind of seeing like all of this space and most of this space and most of this space and a lot of this space. The only really angle he's got to bring anything on is there, and all he could fight from there is a core-linked Zuyong and a Digger. Like, literally, what do you want to do? You want to kill a motorcycle? It has no one on it. The Coom Rider is dead. So yeah, this stupid Magaruba Guard is doing me a real solid right now. And frankly, that's the story of this game. In particular, the Gator being stalled out, my opponent just is going to really struggle to commit heavy firepower into my army. He will kill a lot of irregulars, he'll kill a lot of chaff pieces that I put forward and I allow them to be killed. But it's Dashat Company. These are all pieces with like Dogged and Mimetism. They are frustratingly difficult to kill easily. Even if the Gator did like completely zot this Libertos in one face-to-face roll, it could have taken longer. I was dodging on 16s, he was shooting on 11s. It's the same story against the Coom Riders. So, you know, you can resist attack, you can take your attacks on the chin with these like 7 and 9 point models, and it's one of the things that I really like about Dashat Company. And so we end a second turn here with really like one casualty. I've lost a Libertos. That's like, he's brought the total reactions on back, he's well ahead on classifieds, he's opened more boxes than I have, but it's my second turn now. I've got more stuff that I can do. And so we will do more stuff. Tarek Mansouri does, like Mara, does not Impetuous. But I stand the Zuyong up again, and I think it takes 4 orders this time to put the, 3 or 4 orders to put the total reaction bot down. But I do put the total reaction bot down, and honestly, I don't take any wounds doing it. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to complain, but like, not the end of the world. The Magaruba Guard just uses her attack-aware order, fucking cockatoos. The Magaruba Guard just uses her attack-aware order to reload herself. I consider going into suppressive fire, but I'm like, she's going to have to take a fight along here at some point, probably, so I just don't do that. She just reloads herself in case I need the mines in turn 3, but spoiler alert, I will not. Her whole duty this entire game is an ARO piece. Bless her. The Rafik will move forward again, and it will attempt to reset. It will fail, but it'll get into an okay position. The Coom Rider will move up and around here, and then it's McMurrow time. So with the total reaction bot suppressed, and this Morlock has died in my opponent's turn trying to fight McMurrow, McMurrow is able to move forward again. And he's going to move up and along here, and he's going to move to there, and he's going to spec fire. And he spec fires Zoe and the Gator. And he wounds the Gator and kills Zoe, or knocks her unconscious. Now, there was actually a small mistake that my opponent made here, and this is an easy one to forget. McMurrow was spec firing Zoe from within 8 inches, and my opponent chose to dodge. That is objectively the wrong choice. She should have declared Spotlight. She's rolling dice and affecting him, he's rolling dice and affecting her. That makes this a face-to-face roll, and spotlighting on a 15 is way, way, way better than dodging on like a 7. Now, for my own peace of mind, I just rolled it out a second time, spending a second order, and I actually would have crit her and knocked her out that way. But it is a thing to remember. You can oppose, potentially, you can, like, yes, hacking can oppose spec fire. The big money, though, is that I wound the Gator, which is hilarious. I won't be able to capitalize on that, but it's hilarious. McMurray's going to end his turn here. He tries for a spec fire into this moderator and misses, but I'm not really convinced that moderator is the LT in any case. That's a fine turn. I've put Zoe down. And putting Zoe down means that the reaction zone is down for good. This Libertos is also able to move forward. Where are we? This Libertos moves in here, takes out the Masai Moran. Downside of doing that is that the Masai Moran has a shotgun and will trade for the Libertos. It also takes like 2 or 3 orders to take that fight, because this is Libertos with a submachine gun. I would really like to get shotguns back on those guys. So I kind of want one. I'm going to have to find the SWC somehow in this list. The guided has done nothing so far this game, but I've had previous games where it would have been really useful. So we'll see. More testing required. So this is the slightly better photo and slightly better sort of picture of the game state at the beginning of my opponent's third turn. We can see the lizard, the gator, sorry, has actually gutsed away from its previous position in response to the thrown grenade. McMurray has ended up here, and this Tomb Raider has rolled all the way back here just to try and get forward and stage itself. I mostly wanted to spend orders on the Rafik, but it's isolated, so I just ran the Tomb Raider forward. This is my opponent's third turn at this juncture, which means that he has to bring the drop troops on. And so that's most of what he does on this flank here. So first thing happens, we have a Bashi Bazook trying to turn up there. And it actually gets this poor stupid Katyusha dumb fire rockets to hit all 3 of them. He brings them on close together. But it passes it safe. That does reveal the real one. And it just runs at the Katyusha and puts a shotgun into her. The Magariba evaporates it with an explosive round, and the Katyusha actually makes its dodge. We then have a Hellcat land in there, and it runs in this way. It does it finishes his second classified, trying to do net undermine, because it's a veteran or elite troop, and then it opens another panoply, the panoply in this box here. It draws, I think, a multi-rifle, but the main thing is he now has 2 panoplies. And then the Tomcat Engineer walks on, and it walks on here, and it moves around here, and it tries to fight some stuff, and it doesn't really succeed. And that's most of what can be done. The lizard sort of, moves back here, the gator rather, moves back here and goes into suppressive fire, but I have no particular intention of fighting it, nor do I need to. As I roll into my third turn, I know that I have killed more points than my opponent. I'm down 2 Libertos and a Tomb Raider. Effectively nothing else, which means that I am hugely ahead on points, and I've killed 2 Masai Morans and haven't lost a Specialist, which means I'm also ahead on Specialist points. I can have a crack at going into his lieutenants, but what I really, really need to do is do classifieds. And so that is pretty much the bulk of this turn. This link team is still active. We will use 1 regular order to have the digger run at the Tomcat Engineer over here. It will trade Flamethrower for chain rifles, and Burst 3 chain rifle will put the engineer down, and I will take 1 hit from the Flamethrower. I'll take a wound, but I'll pass my second. All of the rest of the orders in this group, effectively, and for practical purposes, the rest of the orders in the game, I do have the Rafik spend its 2 orders to move here and put the Tomcat down, Hellcat down, which is, I didn't really need to, but hey, it's a free kill and it just locks in that specialist kill. Most of what is happening here is this link is moving. So Gromos climbs down out of this tower, which is annoying, but I had to have her up there because I had to have her safe. Because she was really one of the only pieces that could do this shitty hand of classifiers that I've drawn. They will move up in this direction. Most of the link will go this way, and she will come around here. When she gets to here, she will synchronize the HVT, she will data scan or espionage the HVT, and then she will sit in zone of control, which means I am securing the HVT. My third classified was paramedic, something which was very optimistic, but I couldn't do the other one. I say it was very optimistic because Magariba Guard's my only paramedic, and most of the things that would die have dogged, but it is what it is. Gromos is completing all 3 classifieds by herself in this position here, securing the HVT, synchronizing it, and scanning it. I have exactly 1 command token left at this point, and I use it on, we've got the Rushi here, the Digger here, and the Zuyong here. I break the link and I coordinate them into this objective, and 2 of the 3 of them pass the rolls necessary to pull things out of the panoplies. And they roll, it doesn't matter, I've opened 2 panoplies. All I have to do at that point is the biker runs up and around here, narrowly avoids getting shot by the gator, and it opens the panoply. That gives me 3 panoplies. It gives me 3 panoplies, 3 classes, so more panoplies, more army points, more specialists, more classified, and all of my classifieds. The last thing I do, I have 2 orders left in the turn, is McMurray has a crack at this moderator. And as soon as he tries to dodge the moderator into combat, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's not your real one, because you wouldn't do that otherwise. But there is no way for me to get to this one here. I don't have range to spec fire. I don't have like any capacity to get in. I would just take kills doing it. So I accept that I'm not going to get the LT kills. That is still an 8-2 or 8-3 win, which I'll take. Particularly going second against Nomads with Dashat, comfortable with that as a result. So overall, really cracking game, really liking the list. Really liking Dashat Company just in generally. I love the cheap quality irregulars. They don't have like the same defensive mix that Hackislam is. They don't have like the jammers, but you can fit a tag in this list. The thing I'm currently grappling with is it's just too much deployment zone real estate, so I have to do something about that. And that probably means that maybe the Katyusha goes, not 100% sure, something needs to give. There are just going to be tables that it's just too difficult, right? If I took this list to an event and I just played on some table set up by a Panoshianian or whatever, right? I played on a table set up by someone from Sydney. I would just be screwed. I would have my whole army get shot to death. I set this table up and I had trouble deploying on it. I set this table up in full knowledge of the army that I was playing, which I did sort of in some respects stack some dice against myself. But like, you know, I set up tables attempting to make them playable, and that includes for me, and I struggled to deploy all of my Silhouette 4 stuff. So that is probably something that needs to change. The other thing that I would actually change about this list is I think I will run the Rushi not in a link. It's fast, independent, a repeater. It gets +1 burst, yes, but going from burst 4 to burst 5 is not that massive. And I just did not feel like I needed a second gun in a link that already had a Zuyong HMG. It wasn't really worth it. I could just have the Digger join that link. And so I think there is a strong argument for having the Rushi free running. It makes better use of its speed. It allows me to put it in suppressive fire, makes better use of its repeater. I think it's just going to be generally more useful, and it opens up some deployment flexibility. Like, this was not necessarily the best place for the link, but I only had so many places I could put those Silhouette 4 models. If I'd been able to deploy the Rushi, like, somewhere else, I would have been in a more comfortable position, and that's something I think to consider. So I will probably play the list. Maybe I'll remove the Katyusha for something. 9 points doesn't buy you a lot, but I'll give it some thought, just to get an extra Libertos mine in there. But what is likely is the next thing I'll do is I'll try and run the Rushi unlinked, and just split their firepower even further across the table, because the list has 4 burst 4 SWC guns. That's pretty cool. It's got a really big mix of firepower and great irregular pieces and McMurray. So liking the list will make that small change, and we'll see how it goes. As always, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.